I'm delighted to introduce our visiting speakers today. We have Maysaa Shuja Deen. Maysaa is a writer and a journalist currently based in Cairo, and she is working on some social networking projects for Yemenis. We have Atiaf Alwazir. Atiaf is also a writer and a researcher, and she works, you may know her as Woman from Yemen, on Twitter and on her blog. And she also works as a consultant for social justice projects in Yemen. We have Husam al-Sharjabi. Husam is the founder and chair of one of the largest youth coalitions in Yemen, the Civic Coalition of Revolutionary Youth. And he also works as a consultant for most, if not all, of the major donor agencies in Yemen. And finally, we have Rafat al-Akhali. Rafat is actually one of the Yemen Forum's project partners in Yemen, and Rafat is the executive director of an organization called Resonate Yemen, which works with youth in public policy and youth leadership. Thank you very much for you all coming. Husam, would you like to start us off?
All right, thank you very much, everybody. I'll just give a quick background about what's happening now in Yemen, and then I'll give the floor to my colleagues. And afterwards, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer that. But as probably everybody knows, the previous year, 2011, was an interesting year in Yemen. A lot of events, and all of these events culminated in November 2011 with the signature of the GCC initiative. Whether we like it or don't like it, it was the only solution on the table at the time. And the GCC initiative was divided into two phases. Phase one was focusing on the transfer of power, or the start of the transfer of power. And at that stage, the focus was on diffusing the tensions between the different factions fighting in Sana'a and Taiz and other places. To some extent, that phase succeeded in doing so. And with the elections of Mr. Hadi, if you want to call that an election, on February 21st, 2012, the phase one of the GCC initiative has finished. Now, the second phase, which has started a couple of weeks ago, is focusing now on a few things, and we have 2 years to finish the tasks of phase two. The first thing is the national dialogue, which should start right now. And then we are supposed to have a committee that will rewrite the constitution or amend the constitution, followed by general elections, and then, followed by a referendum first, and then hopefully general elections. So this is the sequence of events there. Now, the focus now is on two parallel tracks. The first track is on the political side, which is the national dialogue, the constitutional reforms, etc. And the second track, which is very important, is focusing on the stabilization of the country, meaning the security aspects, expanding the control of the state all over the country, which is not the case right now. You have a lot of the parts of the country which are not governed by the central government. So that is a priority. Second priority, as I said, is the security. And the third is, and it's very important, is the stabilization of the economy and putting it on a growth track. As you probably know, during 2011, a lot of people lost their jobs. We estimate the unemployment at probably 50 to 60%, going up from 35% in the beginning of the year. We are facing a lot of challenges economically from a fiscal standpoint, from a economic standpoint, from a unemployment standpoint. We are facing challenges when it comes as well to water and government revenues, because as you know, 75% probably of our revenues comes from oil. So I'll leave it at this, and I don't know if my colleagues want to add something.
Sure, I'll try to build on what Husam already said. This past year has really been the most amazing time, I think, of our life. No words can really do justice to the amounts of joy, sorrow, hope, and fear we really felt and continue to feel, not only in Yemen, but in the region. It's a really critical moment for Yemen. We can either move forward or really regress. And it's therefore vital to really take this moment into consideration. And I'll just begin by telling you a story. 2 days after this one-man election we had in February, I was on the bus early morning, and a young boy about 9 years old got on the bus. He was really tired, just sitting there like that. And I asked him, are you late for school? He said, no, I'm on my way to work. So I said, oh, where do you work? He said, at Shumaila Hari. I beg every morning. I go there in the morning. I beg all day, collect the money. I come back, and I give that money to my family. The bus driver immediately looked at me and said, see, what did your revolution do to this boy? What has Hadi done for him? But this was only 2 days after the election. So what this, I think, story really represents is two main challenges, or two of the many, many challenges that we will face. And one is this immense expectation that people have that things are suddenly going to get better. Another one, the clear example, the clear indication of the problems that are facing Yemen: child labor, this boy has no right to education, humanitarian situation is devastating, high poverty rates, women, for example, 7 women die every single day from child labor, etc., etc. All these problems are really, really immense. And like the problems, I think the expectations are as immense. And so the transitional government really has a big, big job. I think what's really important to remember is that while President Saleh has now become former President Saleh, which is a great first step. However, the actual system has not really changed and will not change overnight. We need to remember that this system really is engrossed in every aspect of society. It's a 33-year dictatorship, and the Saleh regime is really like a tree, with deep, deep roots and branches in every aspect of society, and that will take years to really change, and we need to really remember that. We also need to, I think, remember that where we are today is a product of two parallel processes. One is the political process, which is what Husam discussed, and where the JMP, the Joint Meeting Party, the opposition coalition, entered in negotiations with the ruling party, with the regional powers and international powers. And mainly, it's a product of mass people's movement. It's this pressure that really made the JMP sort of move on fast forward to, we have to do something. The people on the street really, really pressured and demanded change. And I think the interplay between both of these processes is really led us to where we are today, and is the only solution, I think, for if the transitional government is to succeed. We need to really focus on both. The government needs to be efficient. Government, civil servants, people in government need to know how to do their job. They need capacity building, etc. Civil society also can do a lot during this transitional period. They need, to monitor what the transitional government is doing, to make sure that people in power are not really abusing their power. They come from the same system, so it's not going to change overnight. And we need to be there to make sure that, they're not abusing their power. We need to push for legislation in terms of, rights for information, and etc. And if I can step back and say, my hope is with this civil society. And when I say civil society, I don't just mean NGOs. I also mean the organic groups that developed in this past year. Because during this whole year, we were I'll speak, for example, in Sana'a, just as an example, we were in Change Square for 1 year. People from different parts of society were all gathered in one place. And for the first time, they were speaking to each other. You know, the Houthis speaking with the tribesmen, with the women, with the men, and everybody was there interacting. And it became really this tent city and people really, you know, the tents, for example, are not just tents. They're now wooden tents because people are, you know, have decided we will stay until we see the real changes. People are still there. Many people are still in Change Square because they want to see comprehensive changes. They want to see the military being restructured. They want to see constitutional reform, not just, you know, replacing someone with someone else. More importantly, it was an incubator for change. And by that, I mean groups emerged to discuss different topics. Federalism, which was very sensitive, was discussed. The academic tents were named by different names. So the academic tent, for example, gave daily seminars at 7 p.m. on different issues. Women took a leading role in the revolution in various aspects. And one women's group gave literacy classes. So all of these different organic groups are really will be part of this of expanding civil society, and we should really take this opportunity as a great opportunity and build their capacity, give them the skills they need, push them to really help the government in terms of being this watchdog. Now, these groups in the square, many of them were led by youth, have now decided that maybe it's time to reevaluate our role. Some are staying in the square as a symbolic entity that we are still here demanding change, real comprehensive change. Others have decided, you know what, maybe we need to think of other ways to protest. Some have started new political parties and have joined these parties. Others have become watchdog entities with the hope of really, you know, putting pressure on the government, monitoring the budget, for example, doing video advocacy, etc. And others are there to promote like values of democratic principles, tolerance, political participation, etc. And of course, working on the humanitarian aid situation. So I think what the UK, for example, can do for this transitional period is really continue the aid, humanitarian aid specifically, but on the condition that it's well managed and efficiently spent aid. Monitor the money, make sure it's really going and being channeled through the right places, and making sure it's going to the right, going to where it's supposed to be funded. Expand beyond the capital. Rural areas are key in Yemen. And really talk to the Yemeni diaspora here. There are really great groups emerging here that have the links to both, Yemen and the UK, and talk to them for context, to know more about Yemen, and I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. Maysaa.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'd like to add to my colleagues Husam and Atiaf and talk about the national dialogue, which included in the GCC initiative as a basic step or as a key first step to rearrange the political life after Ali Abdullah Saleh period, especially that the GCC initiative didn't include many political parts like the Southern movement, Houthis, the independent revolution. So it's a good step to involve all of these people in the political life in Yemen. The GCC didn't clarify any mechanism to this dialogue. There is no committee till now to arrange this dialogue, to organize this dialogue, to coordinate between the parts, the different parts, to set the timetable that we need, the issues that we should discuss. And I want to emphasize about some principles in this dialogue that we should to take care of, that this dialogue must be transparency dialogue, because the media must cover the sessions, because we use that the politicians in Yemen meet each other in closed rooms, that we don't know what they do. And another principle, which is the inclusion, that we should include everybody, every part, because if we exclude any part for any reason, they will return and express themselves in more aggressive way, in more radical way. So the inclusion is very important. it's very important there is no red lines, there is no preconditions, because the national unity, any issue should be discussed, because this process is important by itself, not regardless of the results. It's the first time that Yemenis sit to that table and discuss and listen to each other. It's the first time, so the disagreements will be everything we will disagree. So it's very important to discuss everything, to listen to each other. It's important by itself. Also, I want to emphasize about the importance of the youth and women participation in this dialogue. Must every part involve women and youth in some percentage, like 40% of youth from every part or something like that, because we need to expand our political elite. We need to renew its blood, because most of them are aged people, are above 70s, came from the Cold War. It's a different period now. So it's important to involve the youth in this dialogue. Thank you, everybody, to my
Thank you very much. Rafat.
Thanks. I'm just going to try and build on what my colleagues are saying. I'm going to share some of the areas that we are constantly trying to balance and trying as youth and as civil society organizations to advocate for the right kind of balance between these issues. And one area that maybe wasn't delved into enough is the restructuring of the military and security forces, which is one of the top concerns right now in Yemen. And again, like as far as civil society and as youth are concerned, the major issue is that there's no transparency again. So nobody has an idea of what that means or where that leads or how that's going to happen and who's going to be involved. And for some people, it just means removing individuals from their positions. And for other people, that what they're looking for is widespread restructuring, rebuilding the whole military and security forces, starting with identifying what their mandate is and what they should be doing. So, but then there's always these compromises that need to be made, because are we able to make the changes that we want right now and at the pace that we want them? Or are we going to be faced with a vacuum of security vacuum in many areas, and we're already seeing that. So is it realistic and is it possible to make these changes happen? And what timeline are we looking at? So we're always trying to look at these things and identifying where we should be standing. But another area that is not focused on as much in all these political discussions is the humanitarian situation in Yemen, as well as the economic situation. So in terms of the humanitarian situation, I mean, we were looking at the humanitarian response plan that OCHA and the UN are developing. And the numbers there are just very scary. I'll just choose a few numbers as a reminder, I guess, for people that know Yemen. And so there's over 2 million severely food insecure, over 400,000 internally displaced people, and over 115,000 conflict-affected people. And we're looking at about 450,000 under 5 who have acute malnutrition. And this is just very quick highlights. So the numbers are scary, the numbers are increasing, as Husam mentioned. Unemployment rates are spiraling. So where do we go with the humanitarian aid? What we're looking at is humanitarian aid is mostly delivered by international community and international NGOs. But then we're faced with limited presence on the ground of these international entities because of security situation mostly. So how do we make sure that we can balance the need for increased humanitarian aid with the lack of presence on the ground? So that's one of the areas that has been giving us a lot of difficulty. On the economy side, which is probably the least focused on, and not even from the government, the new government, we are looking at minimal change in what is happening in the economy and the way it is run. The new government, which is split between the traditional opposition and the previous ruling party, does not seem to be going anywhere different in the economy that it was going already before that. And just to give an example, maybe, what is needed to fix the economy are the tough decisions. And these tough decisions are not a welcome thing at this point. So nobody wants right now in the government to talk about, reducing the fuel subsidy, because that is not a decision that they want to take right now, because all the political things are taking priority. And nobody wants to talk about restructuring the civil service and fixing all the inflated numbers that we have, whether in civil service or in the military service. And if we quickly look at the numbers, I mean, just the fuel subsidy and the salaries for the civilians are about 52% of the budget in 2010. So whatever other reforms anyone wants to do, what are they going to be working on if they're not working on these two issues? I mean, there's nothing basically in the budget other than these two issues and the capital expenditure, which is about 15% of the budget in 2010. So unless they start addressing the key issues, the key flaws in the structure of the budget, nothing is going to change in the economy. And if we're not willing to take those difficult decisions now, then what are we doing? We're just delaying them for another 2 years or 3 years. And it's the same cycle that we've been going through anyways, and the economy is just going to continue going down. And the major issue in the economy as well is that what we need is a capable government apparatus in place to do any of these reforms. I mean, we can come up with all the plans, and we've always come up with plans, and World Bank and IMF, and everyone came up with plans, but it never gets implemented because we do not have the bureaucracy needed to get these reforms implemented. And we're now faced with new ministers with not necessarily enough executive experience in the government, and a very weak bureaucracy under them that does not know how to carry out their work. So what do we do there? So we want to fix the economy, but we do not have the necessary capacity. So what are we looking at? Are we looking at parallel structures? Are we looking at how can the international community help with that? How can Yemen help with that? How can we sustain the pressure on the government to make sure that economy still has priority and to make sure that they're at least thinking of these things, that are plans there? Do we do it now? Do we delay it for 2-3 years? What does that mean? So these are all the kind of balances and that we keep facing in Yemen and trying to make decisions on where should we stand and what should we be advocating for. And I'm not going to give any specific stand on these, but I'm just throwing these out there for discussion when we start the question and answer to understand where we are.